As we get ready to celebrate Memorial Day and later this summer, America's 250th birthday, we're taking a closer look at some of the biggest names in our country's history who are laid to rest right here in New York City, their graves in the shadows of towering skyscrapers. It turns out one of the nation's founders, who was never a president but famous enough to have a blockbuster Broadway play about his life, is just one of the incredible stories waiting to be explored at the Trinity Churchyard in Lower Manhattan. Father Bird and Dr. Freeman, thank you so much for joining us. We're here in the churchyard of Trinity Church in Lower Manhattan. People walk by Broadway every single day, and I'm sure so many of them are unaware of the significance of this churchyard. We are standing next to the burial monument for Alexander Hamilton, one of the founders of this nation.
We are surrounded by people who gave themselves to the betterment of others, right? Who had hopes and dreams, imagination, creativity, courage, and perseverance. And how can you not be inspired by that? And quite honestly, propelled by it.
And it's not just Alexander Hamilton. We're going to get into that in a moment, but I'm walking around this churchyard and I see so many names that are familiar. I may not know exactly who they are, but I see a member of the Barclays family here. There's a Fulton. Can you talk to us about the breadth and the scope of how many people are buried here that are critical to this nation's history?
Yeah, Trinity's history is the history of our country, right? From before it was a country. So a lot of the street names in our neighborhood. So you have Robert Fulton and the steam engine. You have Hercules Mulligan just down the path, right? The Spy and the Tailor in the American Revolution. You have the Astor family. You have the Bleeckers. You have all these amazing people. Gallatin, who started NYU, another Secretary of the Treasury. We have a theme.
Yeah. And in more recent times, we have Ralph Ellison. We have Mayor Ed Koch.
Right.
I mean, there are so many people buried here, but let's circle back to Alexander Hamilton. And we are so honored to have you here, Dr. Freeman. You're a professor at Yale University. You have written books on Alexander Hamilton. What does it mean? What does it mean to have him and so many members of his family buried here, given his significance in the creation of our country, especially as we celebrate the country's 250th birthday?
Well, I think having the monument and the graves of his family here in the middle of a city with all of the noises around us, so in the middle of a living moment, right? You can't stop New York from moving. We forget when we think about Hamilton and other people who we brand founders in all capital letters. We forget that they didn't necessarily assume that what they did was going to work, that it was all contingent. They were experimenting, they were improvising. They were in the moment trying to figure out what they thought the right course of action was. And that's true for Hamilton and every other founder, with the Washingtons and Madisons and other folk of that world. So in a sense, us standing here and that monument being here is a great kind of reminder of the fact that that was a living moment, a living history. It wasn't history yet. It was a what are we going to do now kind of a moment. And we lose track. The bells are ringing. I feel moved already. We lose track of the meaning of that moment and what it meant at the time and after for us, when we forget the work and fear and striving and mistakes, all of it, the struggle of starting things is a part of who we are.
Is it still amazing to you that so many decades later, centuries later, that we are still talking about him?
Well, it is amazing to me that we are talking about him at all. Because
why do you say that?
Well, for so long, no one knew who he was.
And why do you think that is?
I think people remember presidents. I think people remember people who made big accomplishments that they can touch. And Hamilton, again, first Secretary of the Treasury, I think that probably in some ways wasn't sexy enough.
Is it just because he was the first Secretary of the Treasury? Or is there something else that he did? Fill us in for the people who are, not aware.
It's an excellent question. No, it is not just because he's first Secretary of the Treasury. He had a vision of what this nation should be. That vision predated the Constitution. when he was in the Continental Army, when he was fighting during the Revolution, even before that, when he was writing pamphlets about what he thought the colonies could be. He had an image in his mind about what the colonies and then the nation could be. And not everyone agreed with it. He was controversial, but he was powerful in his thinking, and he influenced the shape of the nation in a lot of ways that went beyond currency and money.
Father Bird, what is it that you want the folks at home to know about this place? And we should note that this is normally open to the public, this area that we're in right now.
Right, absolutely. It's accessible to the public most of the hours of the day. In fact, if there's daylight, we're probably open. The thing I would like them to understand is that this piece of property, which has been part of Trinity's history since 1697, has been a beacon of hope and care to a city that has always had the dynamism and the needs that our great city has had. So come, breathe deeply, think deeply,
Visit people.
visit people, have a great conversation with the brilliant minds that are here and the great philanthropists, including Eliza Schuyler. I'll give her a shout out,
Okay.
right, for starting an orphanage that still exists today, right? The thought of caring for people is anchored in the land of this place.
Father Bird, Dr. Freeman, a pleasure. I thank you so much for taking the time to talk about the significance of this churchyard and Alexander Hamilton. It's been great.
Thank
We
you
really
so much.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Almost 330 years of history in that churchyard. Well,